Anything that we need to get on the record before bringing the jurors in on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor, other than it was indicated to me on the break that the one spectator using the telephone during the last testimony of the witness, and at least one of the sounds that I heard was attributed to that person. So I mentioned that to the bailiff, and she said going forward she's going to try and monitor that.
Yeah, it was one of our media folks. I don't see the gentleman in here right now. But yeah, the deputies are aware as well.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. That's the only thing I can think of.
All right, thank you. On behalf of the defendant.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I think prior to us taking a break, Your Honor, Debbie Park testified in this case. It's my understanding that the state of Ohio does not object to her sitting in the audience for testimony of the following witnesses. I think she's here more so for support of mom than she is to listen to testimony.
All right, any objection?
No, Your Honor, I indicated that to both Deborah Harden and to her mother, who's in the court room. That Deborah won't wish to stay. State had no objections at all.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else on behalf of the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mrs. Harper. All rise for the jury. All right, you may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. All right, at this time, we will continue with the state's presentation of its evidence. You may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I would call Jennifer Lester. You'll go up and around.
Good morning. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer unto God or unto the court of perjury? You may be seated. Okay, it's important that you speak up loud enough so that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury can hear you. Okay, for the record, if you would state your name, spelling your last.
Jennifer Lester, Lester.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, Jennifer.
Morning.
Who are you currently employed by?
I'm currently employed by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
And is that BCI for short?
Yes, Ohio BCI.
How long have you been employed there?
I have been employed at BCI for 11 and a half years.
And what is your current job title?
My current job title is a Criminal Intelligence Analyst.
And what does that mean you do?
The basis of our job is case support for BCI special agents and also local law enforcement, including police departments and local sheriff offices. Case support meaning link charts, timelines, locating information on subjects, cell phone data and analysis, and case organization.
And have you always been at that job at BCI, or did you have other jobs before that?
Previous to Intel, I worked in our communications department as a fingerprint technician.
Did you go to college?
Yes, I graduated from the Ohio State University with a bachelor's degree in criminology, minor in sociology.
And as part of your job, do you have continuing education that you're supposed to take?
Yes, I have 2 current certifications, one in cell phone data and mapping and one in analytics and intelligence. And I'm a certified criminal intelligence analyst through the Alpha Group.
Through the what group?
The Alpha Group.
And I'm going to ask you to slow down because you are like me and that you talk very quickly.
Okay.
And Carla's going to get real mad at both of us. So what was the Alpha Group?
A certified criminal intelligence analyst through the Alpha Group.
About how many hours in training do you have?
The cell phone data and mapping and analytics and intelligence are both 80 hours training each. And an additional 80 hours I have in cell phone data and mapping.
About how many call detail and cell site reports have you done in your career?
In my years in Intel, I've done at least 50 cell phone data and mapping reports.
And do you help other analysts as well with other reports?
Yes.
Do you have specialized training in how to create these?
Yes, the 80 additional hours on our certification is in specifically cell phone data and mapping.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd ask that she be declared an expert in call detail and cell site analysis.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor.
There is?
Yes.
Okay, please approach. Excuse us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The objection is overruled. The witness shall be declared an expert in this area. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Lester, how do you become involved in cases?
As an analyst, we are typically requested by an agency once a crime has occurred. They will reach out to BCI and request intelligence assistance.
And we've been over this a little bit before, but do you have a specific agency that you work for, or can any local law enforcement call you within Ohio?
Any local law enforcement can call and request an analyst for assistance.
Were you asked to work on the case involving the defendant, Anthony Pardon?
I was.
Who spoke to you, or who reached out to you?
I was requested by Detective Art Hughes from Columbus Police Department.
What did Detective Hughes ask you to do?
Detective Hughes requested a cell phone analysis, originally of the victim's cell phone records.
And then we'll talk about the others later, but were you also asked to look at the defendant's cell phone
I was.
and do some mapping,
Correct.
and also look through a woman named Deborah Pardon's cell phone report?
Yes.
Jennifer, how did you get the information from Detective Hughes?
Detective Hughes provided me all the case information. We had a meeting and also via email.
So you get the records needed through email?
Yes.
May I approach him?
You may.
I'm going to show it's been marked as S1. Do you recognize this?
I do.
Is this the disc that we looked over before that has the records contained that you used to create the information that we're going to ask you about today?
Yes.
So you said that Detective Hughes emailed you the information.
Correct.
What kind of information did he email to you?
He emailed the original historical call detail records provided by the company of the cell phone.
And I know we kind of jumped ahead, but you had said that Rachael Anderson's was the first information you got?
Correct.
Okay. What did you do with that data that was given to you by Detective Hughes?
Typically, we take the call detail records and we analyze them to see what we have received, which usually is subscriber information, calls that were received and placed, text messaging, and cell site locations. So I just reviewed the information and to look for the date in question.
So you get a background of what the detective is looking for?
Yes.
Okay. And you said the subscriber information?
Correct.
What is a subscriber?
Subscriber is who the phone is registered to with the cell phone company.
And cell phone company, do you recall who Rachel's cell phone company was?
Sprint.
Did you create a report regarding the call detail and cell site analysis?
I did.
How do you do that?
The report is a formative document, just taking everything that I analyzed into one report, including call detail records, mapping, observations of cell sites.
And you create a physical report including that?
Yes.
Do you do that at or near the time that you are analyzing the data?
Yes.
And do you have a duty to report accurately?
Yes.
You may.
I'm going to show it's marked as S2. Do you recognize this?
I do.
What is this?
This is my cell site report.
On who?
Rachael Anderson.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Any objection?
No objection.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Where did it? There it is. Jennifer, is this the report that you did?
Yes.
And then you put the detective's name, and then what is this phone number?
That is Rachael Anderson's phone number.
And you have this dated February 22nd, 2018. Is that the date that you received the information or the date you completed the report?
Completed the report.
I'm going to go to page 2. What is this case information up here?
That is the case information that is provided to me from Detective Hughes. Just a brief summary of the information provided.
And this date range here, could you explain what that was?
That date range is the date range of the records received from Sprint.
And could you go over what your call observations were of Rachael Anderson's phone?
Sure. The last outgoing phone call from her target number was on January 28th, 2018 at 1:58 p.m.
And who was that to?
That was to phone number 330-883-9364. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
when I ran it through commercial and open source databases, it came back to a John Anderson.
I'm going to slow you down. Oh, what databases did you run it through?
This was Facebook, so open source information.
And how long was that conversation?
50 seconds in duration.
And then what about her last outgoing text message?
Her last outgoing text message occurred at 12:17 p.m. to 330-646-2269.
And who is that associated with?
Jonathan Kennedy.
And what date was that?
1/28/2018.
And then finally, the last paragraph, what was the last incoming call that you observed?
The last incoming call occurred at 6:30 p.m. from 330-395-1122.
And who was that number associated with?
Patricia Anderson.
And about how long was that phone call?
9 minutes, 50 seconds in duration.
And is this still on January 28th?
Correct.
Now, on the next page, you have it titled Call Frequency Analysis, or the Hot Number List. What is this?
This is something I typically do for each cell phone report I do. A hot number list is your list of subscribers that you've spoken to from the top caller to the least amount. So the top number is going to be the most communicated with, and the bottom number is going to be the least communicated with phone number.
And so on this, it looks like the top number is Sprint Visual Voicemail Platform, and it has in parentheses, key. What does that mean?
That is a number that when a call is transferred to voicemail through Sprint, it generates 624-500-0000 in the call detail records, meaning the call was forwarded to voicemail.
So it will actually show up on your call details if you get a voicemail.
If the call was routed to voicemail, yep.
Routed to voicemail? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then when you have dialed name, when you have no subscriber, at that point, do you know who that number is?
I do not.
How do you get the names for the other people that are listed?
I typically run them through law enforcement databases, our commercial databases that we use, and open source information to try to identify the subscribers. Or also through case file information.
Okay. Now we're going to go to, well, I guess let me back up. What is PenLink?
PenLink is a data analytics software that we use for cell phone records.
And is that what you use for this report?
Yes. Yep.
Now we're going to move to, you have it titled cell site. I know it looks like it got cut off, but location, calls, and the target number, is that Rachael Anderson's?
Yes.
And then what's the date?
January 27th, 2018.
And could you explain to ladies and gentlemen, what does the cell number down here mean?
The cell number is the actual cell site that the phone utilized.
When you say cell site, what does that mean?
It's the tower, or the actual physical tower that the cell site, or the phone utilizes on that call.
And you have access in your training and experience to get those cell numbers? The tower numbers, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. And then what do you do? I guess, how does this information come up? What's a switch?
The switch is just generated by Sprint. That is like a region of towers, and the NEID is more like the area code for the towers. The cell site number would be the actual tower the phone utilized.
And then what about the latitude and longitude?
That is the latitude and longitude of the physical tower.
So this information, isn't that how you come up with the map?
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually, if I may approach Your Honor.
You may.
I'm going to give you a laser pointer. Could you show us, how do you represent a cell site number on a map?
I use a little cell tower icon.
And how does that get inserted in the map?
I physically import the latitude and longitude that's provided by the company into Google My Maps.
Okay. And then could you explain, what are these different times in the bubbles?
These times are all the incoming and outgoing calls that had cell site locations on this date.
And Rachael had Sprint, correct?
Correct.
Does Sprint, you said calls. Are any of these text messages?
No.
Why not?
Sprint only provides location information for phone calls.
So Sprint is only location for phone calls. Do the other carriers do the same or something different?
Some do something different.
So then is this the beginning or the end of the call?
These are all the beginning of the call, so where the phone was when the call was placed.
And then how do you get this house that's labeled Rachael Anderson's home residence?
How do I get it on the map? Physically add the address to Google My Maps.
And is that provided to you from Detective Hughes?
Yes.
So on January 27th, we've got a couple different cell towers that this is hit off of. At 12:51 and 2:21 p.m., in your training experience, where do you believe Rachael would have been in the area of if she's hitting off of this tower?
Her home.
Okay. We'll go to January 28th, correct?
Correct.
And then, again, if you could tell us, what are the times listed from Rachael's phone?
1:40:06 p.m., 1:40:47 p.m., 1:41:28 p.m., 1:58:28 p.m., 2:11:55 p.m., 6:30:08 p.m., and 8:49:29 p.m.
And again, is that the same tower we saw earlier that's closest to her home?
Yes.
Are there any other cell towers on this map?
I believe to the left.
And what are those times?
1:45:33 a.m., 1:46:12 a.m., and 1:48:45 a.m.
And if you can read, what's the area of town in Columbus that the AM hits are coming off of?
The Arena District.
Now we'll move to the fun part where it's a little bit harder to see, so I apologize. What is this?
This is all of the calls and text messages provided by Sprint.
And this was in the information you got from Detective Hughes?
This is a report I generated from the cell phone records, correct?
Okay. And so we'll skim through. You start on 1/26/2018, is that correct?
Correct.
So here we have the direction. What does that mean?
The direction of the text message, whether it's an incoming text message or an outgoing text message.
You skipped ahead of me. We have the, it says call routine. What does that mean?
Call routing.
Routing. I can't read.
It would display either a text message or a call.
Okay. And then for text messages, does it make sense for the duration to be 00?
Yes.
Okay. And then the number dialed, is that the one that she's texting with at that point?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move through. Why did you go all the way back to 126?
This was the whole duration of the records.
And then on 127, same thing? Do we still have the text messages or phone calls?
Yes.
And then I'm going to direct your attention to the bottom half of this, where it has voicemail. Could you explain why that shows up twice?
So the way Sprint reflects calls going to voicemail on their CDRs, it would actually be one call that's routed twice. So it's an incoming call that they show as an outgoing call to voicemail.
Can you run that by us one more time?
So the way Sprint provides these calls is that it would reflect an incoming call that typically is not answered. It would then show an outgoing call and then a third additional call to the Sprint voicemail number that we talked about on the hot number list.
So this isn't her calling her voicemail twice in a row.
No,
That's just how Sprint's records show up.
that is how Sprint displays it on their records.
So even though it says outgoing, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's actually calling her voicemail.
No.
Let's go to this page where we start getting into 128. Do you see that up on your screen?
Yes.
So on 128, let's say around 1:40 p.m., do we have another voicemail?
Yes.
But before this, are you seeing lots of text messages throughout the morning?
Yes.
And then, I guess I should also ask you. You have over on the far right, the dialed name. Does that include the information of the person who's calling or texting
Yes.
to the best of your abilities
Yes.
that you knew? Okay. I'm going to direct your attention to closer to the end. What does that name say?
Hallie Kennedy?
And then, at what point did she call Rachael Anderson?
8:49:29 p.m.
And in your training experience, what does the two voicemail outgoing calls mean at that point?
It was an incoming call that was routed to voicemail, so not answered.
So what was the last call that you can tell that was actually picked up?
6:06 p.m. with Patricia Anderson.
Is that what you stated in your call observations?
Yes.
Okay. And so then we keep going down from the Haley Kennedy call down. At any point, is Rachael responding to these text messages?
No.
And on the next page, again, do we see Rachael having any outgoing phone calls or text messages?
No.
And again, these outgoing voicemails, does that mean that she's calling out to her voicemail?
No. It shows an incoming call that's routed to voicemail.
And Ms. Lester, did Rachael Anderson ever pick up the phone after 6:30 p.m. from your analysis of her records?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. I should clarify, on January 28th was the last outgoing call at 6:30 p.m.
I think that was an incoming call.
Yes,
But yes.
I apologize. And the first missed call was 8:49 p.m. on January 28th.
Correct.
Okay. And I guess I should back up. When you make these maps and you go through these reports, how do you make sure that it's accurate?
We typically have another analyst go behind us and review our reports, and I also double check it myself numerous times.
You said double check it numerous times?
Triple check, look at it a lot of times.
Okay. So you check your own work?
Yes.
Were you also given information by Detective Hughes regarding Rachel's credit card usage?
Yes.
How did he get that information to you?
We had a physical meeting and he provided it all to me while at Columbus Police Department headquarters.
And did he also give you photos from some surveillance videos?
Yes.
What did you do with that information?
I gathered all that information and then looked at the time and dates of all of it and created a timeline with it.
And how does that aid law enforcement in their investigations?
It makes it easier just for a quick glance to see when things occurred on what dates.
You may.
I'm going to show you what's marked as M1 through M4. Do you recognize those?
I do.
What are those?
This is the timeline that I created.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes, you may. I think it's already been presented. Yes, you may.
You're going to look at M1. Ms. Lester, could you explain to ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what do the D's and the A's in parentheses mean under each of these locations?
That would mean if the card was accepted or declined.
So on January 28th, these are from the information you got, these were the debit card transactions from Rachael Anderson's credit card.
Yes.
How do you put this into what we see here?
Well, I gathered the times from the PNC bank information. I gathered the videos and photos through the surveillance videos provided by Detective Hughes.
And then each of these times is the time a person attempted to use the debit card?
Correct.
So, for instance, at U.S. Bank, at 10:06, it was declined. At 10:09, it was declined. At 10:09, it was accepted. At 10:11, it's declined. At 10:11 p.m., all of these, it's accepted.
Correct.
So in each of these, it's used, from what you can tell, except for the Speedy Mart, was it attempted to be used multiple times?
Yes.
And you went through line by line to see which one was accepted versus which one was declined?
Yes.
Look at M2. What date is this for?
January 29th, 2018.
And could you explain a little bit about this map, what you've put on the map for Detective Hughes?
This again was just where the card was used and surveillance video and photos if they were available, along with the addresses of the victim, Rachael Anderson, and the subject, Anthony Pardon.
So at this point, Detective Hughes has given you that they found a subject in this investigation?
Yes.
Okay. And that's why you put his address on there as well?
Yes.
And where did you get these still photos from?
Those were provided by Detective Hughes.
And so again, we see at places on January 29th, like the Fine Fair Food Market, the debit card being used multiple times, sometimes accepted, sometimes declined.
Yes.
And M3? What is this?
This is the date of January 30th, 2018.
And what was the sole place it was attempted to be used at on that day?
Fine Fair Food Market.
And what times was it attempted to be used between?
Between 6:17 p.m. and 6:24 p.m.
And M4. What is this?
February 1st, 2018.
And how many transactions were attempted at this point?
Just two.
And where were they attempted at?
The Pick and Go on East Main Street.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Detective Hughes contacted you again to do another report. This time, was it on Anthony Pardon's phone?
Correct.
Did you make a report the same steps as you did for Rachael Anderson's phone
Yes.
at the time or near the time you were looking at the data?
Yes.
And you have a duty to report accurately?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Lester, what is this?
This is my cell site analysis report for Anthony Pardon.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Which exhibit is that again? I'm sorry.
S3.
S3. Thank you. Any objection to S3? You may. Excuse me.
Were you given similar records as you were for Rachel's phone?
Yes.
Was there a different carrier for Mr. Pardon's phone?
His phone is T-Mobile.
And how does T-Mobile differ from Sprint in what they can give?
T-Mobile will actually provide you location information for calls and text messages.
So, and text messages, you said?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have the lights, please? Is this your report for Mr. Pardon's phone?
Yes.
And what are your call observations from January 28th of 2018?
The last outgoing phone call occurred at 9:14 p.m.
And how long was this call?
It was only 12 seconds in duration.
In your training and experience, could this be somebody calling and not getting an answer?
Yes.
Could it also be a very short conversation?
Yes.
But do you know if that person actually connected with the person on the other line?
I do not.
Okay. And then you have there's no activity on the records until the following morning at what time?
6:56 a.m.
Now, Ms. Lester, what does this mean, there's no activity?
There was no phone calls or text messages between those times.
Could the phone be off?
It could be.
Could the phone just not be getting text or phone calls?
Yes.
So either of those options could happen?
Yes.
What about your call observations for January 29th, 2018?
An outgoing phone call from the target number placed the phone near the area of Innis Road when Rachel's stolen card was used at City Trends on Cleveland Avenue.
And how did you know, or I guess, were you made aware that City Trends was a place of interest?
Yes.
And what about the outgoing call at 6:07 p.m. on January 29th?
That outgoing phone call placed the phone near Morris Road when the card was used at DSW Easton.
Moving on to the next page. Again, we have our hot number list. And then was this the same thing that you did for Rachel's phone?
Yes.
Just who had called, how many times, that information?
Yep.
How does T-Mobile deal with their voicemail?
T-Mobile doesn't reflect it as many calls as Sprint does, so it would just show an incoming call, and then it routes it to voicemail. They also use the same generic number, which is 805-637-7249 on their records.
And then we have cell site locations shown on the map. What does that mean?
These are the latitude, longitude, and tower address provided by T-Mobile for the cell sites I show on the corresponding maps.
We'll go to the first map. Could you explain this map to the ladies and gentlemen?
I think there should be one before it.
Don't believe so.
Maybe it's behind it.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Yeah, this one first.
Yeah. Okay. Apologize. Thank you for correcting me. What is this a map of?
So this is a map of all the cell sites the phone utilized on January 28th, 2018.
And we're still talking about Mr. Pardon's cell phone?
Yes,
And then again down here, latitude and longitude. What
That
is
is
that in reference to?
that is where the cell site is located.
And so there's only one cell site on January 28th.
Yes,
And from 7:45 until 9:14 p.m. on January 28th, 2018, which cell tower is Mr. Pardon's phone pinging off of?
12103.
And is that the one from doing the reports that's the closest to Rachael Anderson's home?
Yes,
Now, should I go back to the first map?
yeah. This map just shows the sector of that same cell site. So the sector is going to be the side of the tower that the phone is hitting off of. So this just is a reflection that the cell site sector would encompass the victim's address.
And you said the side the tower's hitting off of?
Yes,
Okay. So in your training experience, the phone would be somewhere in that area?
yes.
For January 29th, could you explain what this is?
This is a map of all communication with the phone that had location for January 29th, 2018.
I'd like to focus on just a couple. At 4:59 p.m., what area is the defendant's phone hitting off of?
It looks like it's near Innis Road.
And from the previous maps, is that the area of City Trends?
Yes.
And then at 6:07 p.m., what area is the phone hitting off of?
Easton Town Center.
And again, with the information you've been given, is that where DSW is located?
Yes.
So at both of those times on January 29th, the defendant's phone is within the area where the debit cards are being used.
Yes.
On January 30th, again, is this just another map of where his phone is at that time?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Lester, if we are to put the maps from the defendant's cell phone report next to the maps you created for Detective Hughes, should they match up with some of the times?
Yes.
Okay. So on M3, we're looking at Fine Fare Food Mart. What area is that located in?
Cleveland Avenue.
And then on January 30th, again, excuse me, what areas is Mr. Pardon's phone hitting off of?
At what time?
At around 6 p.m. Or I guess I should say 7 p.m.
Joyce Avenue, it looks like, in East 17th.
Do these appear to be around the defendant's home at that point?
Yes.
And then for M3, is Mr. Pardon's home very close to the Fine Fare Food Mart?
Yes.
January 31st. Where are the most frequent hits coming from?
Near his residence.
Are there some actually near Rachael Anderson's home residence?
Yes.
Are those in the morning or in the afternoon?
Morning hours.
And then on February 1st, again, is this similar to the maps we've seen before?
Yes.
What hours is Mr. Pardon's phone pinging around Rachael Anderson's home residence?
In the morning hours?
Okay. And then around the lunchtime hours, where is his phone pinging? Is it close to Franklin Park Conservatory?
Yes.
And then in M4, when was the debit card used at the pick and go?
February 1st.
And what address is the pick and go at?
East Main Street?
Thank you, Your Honor. So in your conclusions, were Mr. Pardon's phone records, did they match up with the debit card usage?
Yes.
Were you also asked to look through Deborah Pardon's phone report as well?
Yes.
And were there any searches of evidentiary value on her phone that you found?
Yes.
Was there a lot on her phone that was of evidentiary value to you or the case?
Yes.
Okay. Were those the searches?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going to show you tonight State's Exhibit CC. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What are these?
These are screenshots of images off of the physical cell phone.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Lester, what is placed in the Google search engine?
Information on Rachael Anderson.
And we're going to keep moving on in C2. Dated February 1st. What is listed in the Google research?
Picture of Rachael Anderson.
Again, on February 1st, what is located?
A picture of Rachael Anderson.
Again, on February 1st, excuse me.
Information on Rachael Anderson.
And what about on February 2nd? What has been searched?
Any new evidence on Rachael Anderson?
On February 2nd, what was searched?
Profile on Rachael Anderson.
And again, still on February 2nd.
How was Rachael Anderson killed?
And finally, February 5th, what was searched?
Update information or Rachael?
Thank you, Your Honor. And these screenshots came from Deborah Pardon's phone, correct?
Correct.
Have the reports and maps I've shown to you, are they true and accurate as you created them?
Yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor? Thank you, Ms. Lester.
Thank you, Ms. Van Coolen. Cross-examination? Excuse me. Yes, you may. Excuse me. And excuse us, ladies and gentlemen. The jury room by 1:30, okay? Before 1:30, and get started as close to that time as we can. Again, remember the admonitions that I've given you with respect to discussing this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Please enjoy your lunch and see you back before 1:30. All rise for the jury.